Hello, everyone, and welcome to EduMatch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is January 13th, so we are here with an awesome panel of people. So we're going to be talking about tonight's topic, which is the power of storytelling. Super excited to get into that. This is moderated by the amazing Brent Coley. We're going to save him for last in the introductions. But in the meantime, we're going to get to know our other amazing panelists. So we're going to kick things off going from my right to left, which is your left to right if you're watching this. Martine, if you could please introduce yourself. I think you're still muted.
I always do that. Good evening, everyone. I'm Martine Brown, and I am an instructional coach out of Garland, Texas. And I'm excited to be with you. I'm going into my 14th year in education. Started off as an English teacher. In some kind of way, I ended up as an instructional technology coach. And I'm excited to be here this evening.
And we are super excited to have you. So thank you so much for joining us. All right. So up next, we have Kristen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen. I teach English at a public high school. And I'm a National Board Certified Teacher, and I've been teaching for about 15 years.
Fantastic. We are super excited to have you here. All right, so thanks for joining us, and welcome to Tweet and Talk. I think this is your first time, Kristen, so we're excited to have you on here. All right, and if you were watching about 2 weeks ago, we had a special episode for EduSnap 18 where you may have seen Alfred for the very first time. But Alfred, if you could please introduce yourself, well, not for the very first time, but for the first time on EduMatch. So now we have him on Tweet and Talk. So Alfred, if you could please introduce yourself. Oh, you might be muted.
Can you guys hear me now? Sorry about that. This is Alfred Ross-Dill. I am a director of curriculum and instruction in Matawan, New Jersey, right in about central New Jersey. I've been in education for about 20 years. Before moving to administration, I was a teacher, and then I went on to be a principal. And now I am a central office administrator as a director of curriculum and instruction. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, Sarah.
All right, we are happy to have you. So thank you so much for joining us. All right, next up we have Albert. Albert, welcome to EduMatch. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
So glad to go after a few people, so I remember to unmute myself. And so I am Albert Thomas. I am a program coordinator with EdTech team. I am about 16 years in education. I have been a teacher, a campus administrator, and then also worked at the district level with integrating technology across our district. So excited to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Welcome to Tweet and Talk, Albert. Great to have you on here. So thank you so much for joining us. And returning to Tweet and Talk, we have one of our VIPs up in here, Cindy. And we saw you at Ty's a couple of weeks ago. So so welcome back to Tweet and Talk. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Cindy Harrison, and I'm up here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota right now, but I'm from Texas. People can't hear that Minnesota accent, and that's why. I taught in Texas. I subbed for over 10 years while I was getting my master's degree in curriculum and instruction, and loved being in the classroom. I taught high school kids, U.S. history, everyone's favorite topic, right? And but now I'm up in Minnesota where I'm an ed tech consultant for TIES, which is now Sourcewell Tech. So love working with teachers and educators across the Midwest.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Cindy. Great to see you again. All right, we're going to skip over Brent just for the time being, but we're going to come right back to him. And next up, we also have returning to panel, Art. Thank you so much for being here. Art, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Always glad to be here. I'm Art. Monday, I start my 4th year as an instructor at the college level. So I teach your 13th graders. So please teach them to research. This is my second career. I did 20 years in the Army and 25 years actually in the intelligence business. So it's a little weird teaching these days, but yep, that's what I do these days.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, and congrats on your anniversary. So we also have some amazing people joining us on the YouTube live chat. Just wanted to say hi to Rachel, Dean, Peggy, Rochelle, Let me see, several people joining in the chat. Let us know you're watching if you're in there so that we can also give you a shout out. All right, without any further ado, we are going to have Brent go ahead and introduce himself and take it away.
All right, and before I do that, Cindy, I just want you to know U.S. history was my favorite subject to teach and in school. So there's at least one person out there who likes it. So yeah, I am Brent Coley. I am in my 6th year as an elementary principal in Southern California. And before moving into admin, I spent 15 years teaching grades 4 and 5. So I'm very excited to talk about my passion, storytelling. So excited.
All right, and we're excited to have you. So ready for the conversation. So right back to you, Brent.
All right, we'll go for it. So panel, first question for anyone on the YouTube Live, if you want to chime in on the chat. First question is, why do you think storytelling is such a powerful teaching strategy? I mean, there's brain research and stuff out there, but without going into there, like for you guys, why do stories resonate with you? Why do you think it's such a powerful teaching strategy?
I love storytelling. In fact, that's what I do when I connect all my students to the English curriculum. In fact, they know stories all about my son. Everything relates to something that he did or something I did, but it also connects the students to you. You're not there to teach the curriculum, you're teaching the students. And so if they see you as a real person and you have a background and you're connecting with them, then they start to connect with you some more. So that's why I love bringing in storytelling, and the kids learn to get me off of tangents, and but we always go back to it.
Totally. Yeah. It's funny how they know how to get you on those tangents. So, but I agree. Anyone else?
Well, for me, it's also the issue of breaking biases too, because I mean, really we are the sum total of all of our experiences. And we might sort of dismiss that when we're talking about, first and second graders, but that applies to them too. I deal with full-blown adults. And when we talk about, the topics and the core ideas, they come into these topics with everything that they've learned, everything they've read, everything they've experienced. But getting past all of that can be very, very difficult. So bringing in stories, bringing in experiences, bringing in other ideas is a way to get around all of that and make sure that we're having that full communications loop to make sure that they really are getting the ideas that are at hand.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I definitely agree with the first two responses. I think it just speaks to cultural responsiveness. I know, a lot of cultures are based on oral history and, information being passed along generation through generation. I can remember stories that my grandmother had, told me over the years that have helped shape me. So I always, think that, telling one story is a very important part of the pedagogical practice. Not only telling one story, but also good listeners to stories, because sometimes, we're in spaces where we need to, to tell people about ourselves in order to gain further, advancement in certain spaces. So I think stories, they go a long way in the classroom and abroad.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I 100% agree with everyone else who's already spoken. I think one of the things I draw back to is I know that there's a lot of people that are Apple fans and love the way that they market and sell their brand. But I think that that's a they rely heavily on stories and being able to get everyone to understand the why behind why they're selling their products. And then they hit you with what the tool is that they're trying to share. So I think a lot of times when we're wanting to convey knowledge and meaning and really get people to buy into whatever it is we're doing, whether it's a student, whether it's staff members, I think that ability to use stories to be able to inspire and to be able to drive people to action, I think is a huge part of storytelling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Cindy.
No, go ahead. No, keep going. Keep going.
I was looking on some of the comments and Rachel, I don't know if it's on the YouTube Live or on Twitter, but she said that we remember it because stories connect the listener to emotions. And that's for me, when I hear a good story, one that evokes laughter or sadness or joy, that's what sticks with us. and we remember that, and then we're able to keep that, the content that goes along with those emotions. So Cindy?
Absolutely. No, just I think that's why I know I wanted to be a part of this as chat, is because the stories are just extremely powerful, as they do evoke all of those emotions, and they connect you to the students, as was that we heard earlier, and it just it brings it to life, and it shows relevance to them, and just it, again, goes back to that just being powerful and memorable on all emotions, good and bad, and yeah, no, just agreeing with everybody that came before me on this one.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead, because I think we could probably talk about this one question for 30 minutes. So let's go to the next question before we do, because there is a game on, and some of us are curious about it. And we'll do a score update real quickly. It is 14-10 Eagles. So, so next question is, do you have a favorite educational storyteller? Somebody that you've read a book that he or she has written, or maybe you've heard a keynote. Is there someone who has they are the master storytellers?
I'll pick up with that.
Go ahead. I think you're unmuted, Martine. Or you're muted?
Let's see.
There we go.
Yes, I had a principal who was a phenomenal storyteller, and what I liked about, well, two things I loved about her and her storytelling as a leader is when she told stories, they were usually pretty funny, and she was always willing to be vulnerable. And I thought that was such a unique trait. At that point in my career, I'd been teaching less than 5 years, so maybe 3 or 4 years max. And I just remember with her specifically, she always made me feel like, even though, she was a phenomenal leader and a phenomenal principal, but even with everything, she had her doctorate, which for me at the time just seemed like this unattainable thing that very few people received. She didn't mind telling stories where she made mistakes, or where she, not necessarily where she dropped the ball, but maybe she had like a slip of the mind or something. And I just remember always thinking that it humanized her, because she was really firm and had high expectations. And I think that's something I hope to kind of carry with me, to always tell stories that remind my audience that even if we're not in the same roles or doing the same types of work, that our humanity within the context of what we do every day is still relevant, and it's what connects us.
Awesome.
Hey, Martine, that's interesting, because the one I'm thinking of is a storyteller from my days in the military, and in the days of teaching youngins in the military. A honest to goodness war hero who, in teaching others from his experience, had zero qualms about telling self-deprecating and humbling stories as a means of being the vehicle to convey lessons. And I think that is an important part that we often don't talk about, as the means to convey to others, particularly when we're using them to talk about our own experiences, and the willingness to do that. I think that's an important part of all this too. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that, to me, that's a big part of it.
Absolutely.
If anyone's ever heard of Joe Sanfilippo from Wisconsin, love when he talks. I can hear the same keynote over and over and over again, and it's still awesome. Just about your brand, naming who you are. And he talks about his trip, about his family trip from like Wisconsin to Texas or something. And he's like, it's this far on Google, but it was like this far. And it's just so funny because it's so real. But then Kurt Vonnegut, who I read, where I teach for Slaughterhouse-Five, his story is so real based on World War II that it's not that hero novel that everyone thinks. It's a real novel, with all the ups and the downs and just his story in itself by creating another character. So I love teaching his novel.
Awesome. Yeah, Joe Sanfilippo, for anyone who is not, he is a master storyteller, excellent passion, energy, and his message is just dead on. And Art, I totally agree with you. I think those self-deprecating to have the confidence to admit when we've made mistakes, because I think we would all agree that is when we've those biggest lessons oftentimes come from when we miss the bullseye, and being able to share that with others, because everybody's missed the bullseye. And I think it brings people into the fold, especially with students.
Oh,
it's like,
absolutely.
I'm not, no, that's fine. That's fine. It's like, I'm not the only one who has made that mistake before. It's okay not to be perfect.
Yeah, I'll just share one really quick, and it's not necessarily he's obviously not in education, but Sidney Poitier is one of my favorite people that I could sit and listen to him for hours. He wrote a book called Measure of Man, which is basically telling his life story. And I would highly encourage you. The book is great, but also pick up the audiobook, because he actually reads the audiobook. And it is almost like he is reliving every moment, and the authentic way he relates the stories that were happening to him, whether it was dealing with all the issues as an African-American man during that time period. He conveyed the struggles, and he was very vulnerable in telling his story. But I think the big thing I took away from that is just how honest he was in his story, and how willing he was to let you in. And I think that's a huge part of storytelling. A good storyteller always makes you feel like you're part of the story. They draw you in, and it's almost like you're setting along, and you're either on a roller coaster riding along with them as they're going through the different moments. I've remembered, I read this book years and years ago, and I come back to it periodically, because it is just one of those things that there are lessons that I continue to pull from there. So.
Awesome.
Well, if I can just, I have a gamut. So I'm going to start with Napoleon Hill, one of my favorite authors in Think and Grow Rich. You may have heard of, but he's a fascinating storyteller. Les Brown, love his stories. But then I'm kind of going to go to some, hip hop. And, when I think of Slick Rick, I mean, growing up, it was no better storyteller than Slick Rick, who was like, it was so visual, the way he told his stories, and then to Nas, and then to Biggie and Jay-Z. So sometimes, I think that we have to like kind of go back, and I think about, even with Napoleon Hill, one of his things with storytelling is that he was like, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you about, and then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. And I think, with good storytellers, that it's kind of that's kind of how it happens. And then at the end of the story, you're just like, wow, so those would be, my favorites.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, everyone. There's some great ones coming in on the chats as well. Steve Dembo, Hall Davidson, Henry Winkler. I've heard him. He is a great The Fonz, great, yeah. and he's got an amazing story. Growing up with a learning disability, I think it was dyslexia. But
yes, and he's written children's literature.
Yep. Yeah.
I just had to do this shameless.
Yeah. There we go.
I have to give him a +1.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question, and that's, some of you have touched on it already. But how do you incorporate, like Kristen? I think you talked a little bit about this already. How do you incorporate storytelling if you're in the classroom, or in your position, if you're at a district level position, or how do you incorporate it into what you do?
For me,
I'll start with some of that conversation.
Go ahead, Martin.
For me,
go ahead, Kristen.
Go ahead.
Okay. For me, it just comes naturally. It's not something you can plan. You can't, put it in your lesson books. You have to. It just comes at the right time, depending on what you're teaching, and the story just comes in for the students to understand it better. At least with me, it's not something where you can pre-plan it and then focus on, this is what I'm going to teach today, and then kind of I guess you could say, force it into the conversation or the teaching.
Agreed. Martine, I think you had. I think you're still muted, Martine. There we go.
So right now, I'm in the process. I'm kind of excited, but a little nervous too. We have a college readiness program called AVID on our. We have an AVID program on our campus, and so AVID is a college and career readiness program, and a couple things we have to do. We have to continue to recruit more students. We have to collect data. We have to get student feedback, teacher feedback, parent feedback, and so I decided to put together this concept of y'all know, like the weekend before the Super Bowl, how they have a media day and like all of the major news platforms come and they interview and do pictures and all of that. So we're replicating that with the AVID program. So Tuesday, I made press passes for my kids, and the kids are going to get interviewed, and they they'll have a headshot taken. And this idea is that we want to collect and preserve their stories. Many of them are in the process of getting their scholarship acceptance letters, having their earning scholarships. And so we wanted to really take the time and to really just document that process and remind them that their stories are important and have value. And not only is it about getting them to their next chapter, but it's also about leaving a legacy, and a legacy that will help other students consider the AVID program or even participate or even to connect with the program itself. So that's one way. We're really trying to, we've been working with the kids to help them be able to effectively tell their own stories so that when we meet Tuesday for their press day, essentially, they'll be prepared.
Awesome. AVID is a fantastic program. Fantastic program. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
I know from a district level, one of the things I did this year, particularly, I decided to take one of the courses that are offered to our students. So I take which is killing me, at 7:30 in the morning, I take a molecular biology course. So in the course, the kids are brilliant. And, one of the things that the teacher has them do, which is pretty cool, is that they pretty much run the course. But, they do various presentations. And I was talking to the professor and, I said, what we got to get better at is getting, enabling and getting our kids the resources to become better storytellers, because they have like all of this in their brain, these great ideas. And sometimes they don't do the greatest job of sort of outlining it or getting it to the masses, so to speak. So what we're working on is a course, Next Generation Storytelling. And it'll sort of be like TED Talk. And then teach, young people how to take complex situations and complex scenarios and information and get it down to, such a level that the masses can understand it. So that when you're presenting things in an elevator pitch or to boards of education, because our students also often present to boards of education, to our board of education, they are able to do it in sort of in layman's terms, but also telling a story, about what it is that they're learning and that they're trying to achieve.
My son's trying to, now I have my son and my dog back here. What Alfred was talking about, and I wanted to add on to it, my students also have storytelling in there, because when I was teaching Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, one of my students is actually from that town of Columbia, and he actually was telling about what was going on that time, what his dad said, because his dad was living there during the time of the murder. So he became the storyteller of the class, and I learned a lot from him just by having those roots there. So it's not just us teachers, as kids love to tell stories that connect to the lesson at hand.
Absolutely. And I love, I think what you said is it's so often it's unplanned. I mean, yeah, sometimes a story that from our past experience will line up with what we're teaching, but I have found that it's like, for me, if something happens in the hallway with students that resonates and it's a story that maybe could teach somebody, that's when a blog post will happen, or that's when a podcast episode will happen, because it's like we have to strike while the iron's hot, so to speak, because I'll forget about it. I don't know about you guys. I'll forget about it if I don't do it right then and there.
I agree. It's that authenticity is having it at the moment. You can't plan the stories. I mean, there's some I would know that I would have throughout the year in teaching history, but those unplanned ones are usually the best ones.
Yep.
And,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, well, one, Alfred, I hope that program works out, because really I need more 13th graders who actually can totally rock that. Please, please, please. But then, so I'm the new instructor in this crowd. I mean, I'm got 3 years under my belt, but I've got like 600 years out in the field I'm now teaching. And, every lesson that I go to give, I completely expect it to fail as soon as I open my mouth and try to give some instruction on anything. But I know that the background and the fallback for all of that is all this experience, 35 gigabytes of data that back me up, and everything else that goes with it. So that is the supporting element that goes with it. And every single student in every single one of these classes, that is the way that I can make sure that I connect to each of them and make sure that each of them does hit the learning objectives in every lesson and in each of the classes. It's critical to me.
Absolutely, Art. I totally agree with you. We're getting kind of toward the Albert. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah,
Go
I just want to share something really quick. And so I'm a huge cinema nerd, and so don't judge me too hard. And so one of the things I love, one of the things I share in presentations is the fact that we have so many incredible tools to be able to have students be able to share their stories. And I think that the more that we can leverage those tools to be able to get them to share. So there's so much power in their phones. And one of the things I will just share is kind of a practical resource. If you haven't gone to the Adobe Education Exchange, it's 100% free professional development. And they have tons of storytelling or courses that can help our PD and different resources that can help with bringing storytelling to the classroom. So I would encourage anyone that has not checked that out. It's free, and it's worth at least spending some time over the next couple of days and just kind of seeing what you can pull into your classroom.
I have not heard about that, but I definitely, Albert, thank you. I will be looking into that. That sounds awesome. And you use the word leverage all this technology that we have out there. I'm going to take this opportunity for like a little shameless plug. I do a podcast called Teaching Tales. If any of you on the panel wants to be a guest, Sarah's been a guest. So and the whole thing is, it's just literally we tell stories. We share stories from our experience. So if you got stories about kind of this theme, let me know. Literally hit me up on Twitter, say, hey, I'm interested. Don't feel like you're going to be overstepping your bounds. I'm asking right now, if you guys want to talk some shop, share some stories, hit me up, because I'm always looking for people to share those stories. And speaking of that, kind of leads us to our last question. Resources. Albert, you just gave us one. The Adobe Education Exchange is a resource. Any other resources that any of you would recommend for storytelling and education?
When I went to ISTE this past summer, it's called Eyewitness, and they're real accounts of people who actually witnessed tragedies and historical events. Like there's some survivors from World War II who might have been in concentration camps, and they actually either record their stories and you can listen to them, or you might be able to get them to speak to you via Skype. So it's called Eyewitness. I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm meaning to. But those are real stories and real accounts, not hearsay and not what they've heard from other people.
Gosh, that's awesome.
Three tools I'll share with everyone. I've been fooling around a lot with. Powtoon is awesome for students. I've been getting students involved with that and teachers, and I've been sort of putting up some content for teacher practices using that in My Simple Show, which is sort of like very similar. Ways that you can use pictures and you can use animations and some pretty cool, presentations to tell stories with voiceovers. And finally, Wave. I just started fooling around with Wave. I actually, I did my first one, I think, with an EduMatch with the book, like a little promo. And those are really fun. And I think that, I've been slowly introducing them to teachers and to students as well.
Awesome.
So I'd say there's a couple of things. One is, right, modeling storytelling. And it's more than just the way we deliberately storytell, but when you have events, go get people to come and do storytelling, right? I'm a vet, right? That's a big part of my life. But when you have events that are, Memorial Day, when you have Veterans Day, things like that, go find your local place and go establish a relationship and have somebody come in and deliberately tell a story. That you might as well. It's a wonderful opportunity and it models it.
Amen.
Everybody can benefit from that. And then the second thing is, there's also far better writing tools than Google. So if you have students who are going to be serious about writing, good. Encourage them to start using things that foster things like using an outline. So like Scrivener. Scrivener's a wonderful one. You pair it with things like Evernote, which allows you to collect your data and collect your research and put your ideas together. Now, that may not be really awesome for, 4th and 5th grade, but there's a break point somewhere in there where they actually need to get serious about putting ideas together and planning and having outlines and collecting long-term and fueling that fire and that passion for those things that they love. And with today's world, they're going to have that stuff forever. So grow it.
Awesome. Those are some outstanding resources. I've jotted some of those down. I love that eyewitness one.
If I can just share one thing, and this is not necessarily a resource, but one of the things I would just kind of, I think a big thing that we have to make sure our kids are understanding is the fact that they need to understand that they have an opportunity to leave a legacy. And I think the more that we can impress on them that they are leaving an impression, good or bad, and really encourage them to be mindful of their stories, the more we're going to be able to see impactful change. So I would encourage to look for opportunities for them to be able to share their voice. I know sometimes as educators, we're trained, we have been to school for a number of years. We have done all the professional development. And sometimes we don't give students the opportunity just to share their voice. So I would say look for those opportunities that students could just be given an opportunity to be empowered to share their story and own their story. And so, because I think that'll go a long way for them to develop their legacy.
Love it. And like you said earlier, with the technology that we've got available to us, giving students that voice and a global audience is literally, it's we hold the power in our hands. So that's awesome. Well, I think we're just about done. So Sarah, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for an amazing conversation. Definitely wanted to give a huge shout out to our moderator, Brent. Brent, your book is coming out. Tell us a little bit about your book that you are dropping in March.
Yes, I have written a book about stories. It's called Stories of Edu Influence. And kind of like what we talked about, kind of the premise behind the book is I love stories, and I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't love a good story. And whether you're a teacher, administrator, librarian, campus supervisor, we all have life-changing powers to positively impact the students or adults that we serve. And those powers kind of make up what I have termed edu influence. And in every chapter of the book, literally, the whole book is me sharing stories from 23 years of my experience, from humble successes to epic failures, because I think that so many times that's when people can relate to that. So yeah, excited. So every chapter is different power. So there's the power of relationships, the power of the little things, the power of fun, the power of appreciation, the power of sharing, power of apology. So I'm really excited to share those stories because I think that that's really what resonates, and it helps people relate to what we've done. So excited to release that in March. Thank you, Sarah, for giving me the platform with EduMatch.
Thank you for sharing your awesome story and stories, plural. So Peggy in YouTube Live was saying that this was such a great conversation. So she would love to see a sequel. So just go ahead. I'm just posing that out to the panel right now. So definitely, you know, we might see this topic come back up. So that would be great. You know, Brent, if you're down to do a part 2 on this, then
totally.
All right, sweet, fantastic. So just wanted to really quickly before we go, just a couple of quick announcements. So next week we have Dean, who is going to be doing a chat on the journey to the why in you. So definitely tune in for that. So we're going to be talking about identifying our why, like why we do what we do. So if you're interested in being part of that, you can go to podcastwiththenest.edumatch.org/sign up. And if you're interested in watching, it's going to be at the same bat time, same bat channel, podcastwiththenest.edumatch.org/tweet talk. In addition, we have some awesome badging challenges going on right now, so you can earn a badge. All of our panelists are going to earn one by nature of being here. Our moderator is going to earn one by nature of being here. So there's some ways for our viewers to also win some badges. So check out our badge list. So badgelist.com/edumatch. And I believe that's just about everything. Also, got to give a huge shout out to Alyssa Joy, I should say, just dropped her very first book on Tuesday, Daddy's Favorites. So check out #Daddy'sFaveBook. Also, Brian Kulak is going to be dropping his Level Up Leadership, which is coming out on the 21st of this month. So check him out as well. So, all right, that's about it on this end. So everybody have a wonderful week, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye.
Bye, Sarah. Thanks.
Bye, everybody. Thank you all.